Hey everyone, live with our coffee with me this morning. Reminder, so I'm going to be in Cincinnati on Tuesday, October 8th. And so if you wanted to try and do a meet and greet, I will be doing that. This will be the last call for the meet and greet, let's say, so I can get some things scheduled. I've already got some visits and tours scheduled while I'm down there. I'm really excited about those. So we've got to answer, hey, Angel Mommy in Iowa. Very exciting. I've got some questions to answer from some viewers. What's the most moving thing you've ever been told by the family of the deceased you cared for? Can you share the situation? This is a big, bold question. Good morning, everyone. I would say just somebody saying, thank you for giving me the opportunity to say goodbye when you've done like a restoration type thing, like if someone's killed themselves or there's been an accident and the family doesn't think they're going to get to see their loved one, or they get to see them maybe more peaceful than when they found them. Those are pretty moving moments. They kind of hit you right at your core. So have you ever had to stop preparation of someone midway for another day? Sometimes you maybe not, like, so the course of your day, you may have a funeral and you may have this and you may have to meet a family and somebody needs to be embalmed and you're the only person there. So you may go in and you may set features and get your fluid mixed. Then you may go out and have a funeral. And then when you get back later, you finish the process. So you may do it in between some of the other things because it needs to get done. So that would be the only reason. Some embalmers delay aspirating. So they may embalm and then do the aspiration later, which is the process. You take the trocar and puncture the abdomen and take out as much fluid and fecal matter as possible. Sometimes that's delayed. Embalmers, there's pros and cons both ways. I say get it out. Why leave bacteria in longer than it needs to be there? But some people just wait for whatever reason because they want the other fluid to do some preservation and do work before they go in. So pros and cons there that some people do delay. So Lydia, job shadowing. It's going to be different at every funeral home. Some funeral homes will let you come in and see an embalming and sit in on an arrangement and kind of see everything. But some will just give you the basis. So you may ride along with them when they go for the funeral, or you may kind of watch them doing office work. It depends. Every funeral home is going to be a little different. But, be ready to assist and help if you can, and take notes, have good questions prepared. There's no stupid questions to ask, because if you don't know, you don't know. The only way you're going to know is to ask. Yes, I've had a body make noise. If there's air in the lungs, and sometimes if you roll the person, they may expel that air. And sometimes it does startle me if I'm not expecting it, but it's not a lot. Yeah, multitasking. Oof, being a mom. That's my daughter. So I'll tell you guys a funny story. The other morning, my daughter was really upset and she came in. I was doing my hair and my husband was trying to get breakfast for the girls. And she was crying because she thought dad wasn't going to make her breakfast because he couldn't do both breakfasts at the same time. He could only do one thing and then the next. That's, most men are that way. I will say it's been proven scientifically that their brains are, task focused like that, where women's can do more at one time. And so I had to come down and explain that dad will make one and then the other, where mom will do both and make lunches at the same time. So it was kind of a silly moment. But I'm fixing to start funeral home school. What kind of advice do you have? What was the hardest part for you? Gosh, it's so funny because I get asked this question, and my number one advice is go join the Facebook group, Funeral Directing 101, which is for students and apprentices and pre-mortuary students, where you're taking the pre-rec classes, because you can ask students what they, hey, you guys just started. What were you surprised that you needed, or what were you not prepared for? So those kind of things. Just go in with an open mind. You're not going to be good at every class. You're not going to be good at every topic. You are learning a huge rainbow of information because you need to know a little about a whole lot of things. But you're never going to have to do is in depth in all those areas as you're learning. You're learning information to pass a board. You're going to learn hands-on in your apprenticeship what you need to know to do the job more thoroughly. So don't go in getting really, don't be in despair over maybe not passing or not doing super well in one area. Like chemistry is not my forte by any means, but I don't have to do chemical equations to embalm a body per se. But you need to know a basis of chemistry to pass your boards. So go in with a mind knowing that, and that knowing that getting a C is not the end of the world. It does not make you less of a funeral director. So, good morning. Have you ever had families get in physical fights at funerals? So, no. I've come really close and thought, ooh, this is the moment they're going to start swinging, and then they don't. And I know that sounds silly, that I'm bummed that there's not a fist fight at a funeral, but sometimes we need a little excitement in our day. So that wouldn't be the worst thing. But no, I've had a lot of arguments, some pushing, but no like throwing of fists. I've had my friend has been at a funeral. I was actually supposed to be at it and it wasn't. And there were guns there. Police had to be called and things because family was fighting and guns came out. But I'm glad I wasn't there for that, obviously. Oh, hey, everybody. Thank you so much for the support. You guys are awesome. Is the person who signs a contract with the funeral home responsible for payment of the service, or is it the responsibility of the family? So I always tell families that there's two kind of people in charge. There's the next of kin who completely is in charge of choosing what is happening to the deceased body. Then there is the person who is paying. They do not have to be the same person. Whoever signs that contract is responsible. It's a contract. It doesn't matter who signs it, that person is responsible for what they have signed for. So the family is not responsible to pay something they did not sign for. Same goes if, say, a third party comes in and signs the contract and then the family wants to see the contract. They do not have any authority to see the contract because they did not sign the contract. So only the signer gets to see what's actually on the contract. So there's privacy and stuff. Privacy, I sound like I'm English, I guess. I don't even know why I said that. When doing an ID before cremation, how long give family time? So it depends on the funeral home. Typically, we would maybe allot for a half hour or so of an ID. It's not a gathering. It's not a visitation time. It's an ID time. It's time for you to come in, see the person, identify them, spend a few moments, and leave. If you want to have a visiting time and you want longer with the person, then you schedule it, you pay for it. So funeral homes have so many rooms, which can be scheduled out for people. And if you don't want to pay to use the space, to use the room, to have an identification, then they're not going to give that time to you usually, especially if it's in an evening. That means staff has to actually come in for that time, which means you have to pay somebody. And if you want to have an identification time in the evening, that means they have to pay somebody, so they need to be paid. So it's not illogical that if a funeral home wants to charge you for an identification time in the evening, it's because they have to have staff come in for that time. So an identification time is not a visitation time. As a person, what do you say that group was? Funeral, it's Funeral Directing 101 is the Facebook group. You must fill out the 3 questions that are asked of you, and you must agree to the final item for me to let you in the group. Otherwise, I won't let you in. You wouldn't be surprised and shocked how many people just request to get in and think I'm going to just let them in because they don't answer the questions. They answer the questions. It's like turning in a resume that has no information on it. Can't really verify what you are just because of your name. So, hey, Mac in the house. Mac McMasters is an awesome gentleman who has supported me from the beginning. And there are several of you who have done that. And we have great dialogue. You send me great information and feedback. And I'm so thankful for you guys. So when a person gets cremated, do you undress them or leave them dressed? We leave them in whatever they're in unless the family wants us to dress them in something specific, which happens that maybe you want somebody dressed in something specific for the cremation, or you want something removed prior to cremation. Typically, no blushing. Typically, if someone comes from a hospital, they'll be in a hospital gown and that's what they'll be cremated in unless you bring something different. Thank you, Melissa. That's so humbling and that's so sweet. And I do get a lot of really positive, good messages, but every one of them is very important to me when you guys say that because they keep me going, they keep me doing this stuff. If a family is really nervous about how the deceased is going to look before viewing, have you ever just draped the body before dressing casketing so the family could see before you finish the dressing? No, because I'm going to dress them regardless. We're going to dress them if there's a viewing or not. It's not like we're going to, if there's no viewing, have them be naked. They're still going to be dressed even if it's a closed casket. So I would get the person fully ready. So they were the way that everyone was going to view them. So the family could view them in that state and then decide. Why look at something half done and make your decision? I would rather a family see somebody how they're going to be dressed in their casket, ready to go. We can always make alterations to how they look after that. But I would rather someone see the final product than see us halfway and not understand what the final product would look like that we want to present to somebody. And I get, saying it's a product, the whole picture is a final product. The setup, the casket, the person, it's, as I've said, this is a production. It's not a show in a negative way, but it is. We are creating this visual in terms of the viewing with the person, and it is like a production. There's a lot behind the scenes. There's a lot of backstage, essentially, things that are happening. And that service and the visitation is all what you see in the front of the house. But there's a whole bunch going on in the back to make that possible. Kari, did you get my question about thumbprints and phones? No, I don't think I did, Angel Mommy. If it was an email or if it was on here, I don't think I did. Hey, Canada. Hey, Brian. Charlie Brown, I'm not sure what you're asking in your question. Have you ever been so disgusted or appalled that you had to report an individual funeral director or a funeral home over something? Yes, I have, actually. There was a funeral home that was operating without a licensed person, and they were embalming without a licensed person, and I've called the state. There's been other situations that I've called and reported and tried. The problem is, just like every situation, just like with child neglect and things like that, there's nobody just waiting there to respond to your allegations and your accusations. And so it's a process, and you have to file a paperwork, and then somebody has to investigate. And so it takes time, and sometimes the situation is rectified before they even investigate, or they investigate and don't see because of, masking. And there's just a lot of situation there, a lot of problems. We were wondering if families try to unlock their loved one's phone by using their thumbprint. Oh, yes. That's a great topic to bring up. I have heard from other funeral directors that the families have brought in a person's phone and asked to, have access to the person's hand so they can get in their phone, since they have like the thumbprint unlock on a phone. There's also facial unlock and facial recognition. So, yeah, I think we should all operate on the assumption that Any moment can be your moment. So if you think you're going to have time to delete something you don't want people to see, you shouldn't have it to begin with. Often these families where maybe a husband and wife die together or something, all I think about is, somebody's going to go in and go through their home and go through their drawers and go through their stuff afterwards. And what are they finding? What would somebody find if they came and went through my stuff? Bigger question, is all my stuff in order? If they came in, could somebody logically find my will paperwork and my life insurance paperwork and passwords for my computer, passwords for all my things? Like, how would somebody pay my bills? How would somebody do these? So I ask myself these questions often to make sure my stuff is in order. And by all means, I don't ever have all my stuff in order. I'm probably a little more prepared than most because I encounter more situations than most. But get your crap in order. It's the best thing. Stop and think. Ask yourself, if today I did not come home and somebody had to go in my house and go through my stuff, what would they find? Can they find what they need? And how can I be better prepared? There you go. Mic drop, end of the video for today. No. Ryan, if they are heat sensitive, all you do is hold the deceased the deceased person's finger for a little bit to generate heat, and then do it, and it works. I have a question for you. If someone like me doesn't have life insurance, do the family and funeral home still have to uphold their wishes as how they would like to be cremated or burial? So depending on the state, nobody has to uphold your wishes. Your wishes actually don't matter in some states. It's what your next of kin wants done with you. Once you're dead, you don't get to decide for yourself in a lot of instances. So make sure you have someone aligned with you that wants to follow your wishes, because they're the ones deciding. So like in Michigan, there's this designation form. So if I don't think my spouse or my children or my parents want to follow my wishes, then I can designate somebody who I know will. So I can go take Brian and I can have him sign the form as long as I know Brian's going to follow my wishes. And Brian would then be in charge of my services, not financially, unless he wants to be, but in every other way. So your wishes do not have to be followed by your family. That's the unfortunately sad truth of it. Yes, Chump, I have had multiple elderly couples that die within days, months, or a year of each other. It is such a true cliche that you die of broken heart. And I've done that several times where the family comes in for the funeral of the first one and tells me that the other one died, a couple hours before. And so we have the funeral and then we hold the body so that we can bury them both at the same time, a week later or whatever. But yes, it happens often, and it's romantic, but it's sad, but there's so many different emotions there. Angel mommy. She says, I'm not saying I have a bunch of nude photos. I have conversations with coworkers with confidential info, or even just regular conversations. It just seems like such a violation. But the question is, do you even care at that point? Because you're not going to be embarrassed by it when you're dead. It's as long as there's nothing disparaging, I guess, of yourself, but delete conversations if you think they're bad after you've had them. Why keep them? Nudes. After a visitation, we just leave everything as it is. No music, no lights, no, you don't close the casket for any reason. You just leave it as is. There's no reason to do any of the other unless you're preparing for the next day to move them to the church or have to set somebody else up in that room. Some lights are typically on like in a window at a funeral home at night, just like most businesses, but you don't leave anything on specifically for the deceased. Hey, Holly in Michigan. I'm in Michigan. Where are you at? Thank you, Salome. Oh, I'm still giggling over nudes. When someone dies from AIDS or some highly contagious disease, do you all treat their body differently? Could a funeral home director catch it? This is a question we get a lot because there's a lot of scary things out there. Right now in Michigan, a lot of people are dying from EEE, which is something like deer get from mosquitoes, and we have had multiple deaths in our area from mosquitoes, and it's super scary because you get bit by a mosquito and you don't know you have it until it's too late. So you get bit by a mosquito, and with like 8 to 10 days, you're dead. You get swelling around the brain, and so you literally have no idea you have it until it's too late. And so we're kind of all walking targets right now in Michigan because this is happening. But it's kind of the new scary disease right now going on for us. So everybody will use PPE, personal protective equipment. We make sure we're protected because we don't know what people have. And you may have deceased that never even knew they had contagious diseases. You know, how many people are walking around with possibly HIV that maybe don't know they have it, that they're just carrying it and it didn't play a factor in what they actually died of? So we have to assume everybody's contagious. We have to assume little old grandma who's 90 years old might be contagious. So we take precautions against everybody. If someone dies of a highly contagious disease, then we typically are alerted by hospice or by the hospital. C. diff is a big one because that is highly contagious for us if we're exposed to the excrements of the deceased. I think Jacob-Jakob's disease is the worst, and it's in the brain, and the brain stem and everything. And that's one that there's a lot of embalmers who will not embalm someone with that disease because it's essentially mad cow disease in an animal. It's the human version, and it's highly, highly contagious. And so a lot of people are not comfortable. You can't catch it by just touching the deceased, but they're highly contagious if you were to embalm. And so embalm in puncture something you're not supposed to puncture. So there's definitely situations that are highly contagious that an embalmer may not feel comfortable encountering. And so we do take precautions, and not that we handle the body differently, but we do work a little slower and more cautiously, for sure. Come up to Canada for a meet and greet. Guys, I would love to meet people. I keep going places and say I want to do a meet and greet, but no one can ever meet when I'm going. So in the Clare area, okay. How do you know how long you hold the body unclaimed? Everywhere is a little different. So it depends on if it's the funeral home has taken somebody into their care and then the family stops responding, then we turn it over to a medical examiner. Essentially, they have to authorize the cremation or the burial. Sometimes the body goes to the medical examiner and they actually hold the body until something can be done with them. Because funeral homes don't have holding facilities sometimes. They don't have coolers, they don't have refrigeration and ways to store somebody long term that's not embalmed. So medical examiners often have the refrigeration and the cooling in order to store somebody. So the duration and the length of time is different for every county, every state. So it can be a month, it could be 2 months, it could be a year. It all just depends. Does someone stay all night at the funeral home after the viewing? I showed out a funeral director in high school and he would sleep there afterwards. Is that just personal preference or a requirement? It's personal preference. There's no reason to have to stay at the funeral home if the body is there. So, is embalming fluid a carcinogen? Seriously, what is not a carcinogen nowadays? My coffee creamer is probably a carcinogen. Everything is a carcinogen. Embalming fluid, yes, formaldehyde is a carcinogen, just like everything else. Yes, Eastern equine encephalitis is what EEE is. Salome, if I come to Australia, you can be my Uber. We will have a dinner date, my friend. A lady lost her newborn baby and she took the baby home for 5 days, slept with it, held it for that long. Is that possible? Yes, you can. I would recommend preparation before taking the baby home, because after 5 days, a baby is especially going to be yucky. There's no other word. Yucky. The decomposition happens very quickly with children, and especially infants, because they are such a high concentration of liquid in them. They're like 98% moisture, and so they will decompose very quickly. A body does not always swell after embalming, but the tissue is often dehydrated when somebody dies. And so embalming is rehydrating. And so it does plump up the tissue. It's like going and getting an oxygenation or a hydration facial. It's going to plump up the tissue and fill those layers of the dermis with moisture, essentially, and kind of fill them up. So swelling sometimes happens. It depends on trauma to the body, how the body is embalmed, all sorts of different things. So bodies don't just swell after embalming, though. So this gentleman asked me, for us non-initiates, how is your study group going? Is it weekly, a couple hours? Do you review a textbook? Students used, go on field trips. Oh, that would be fun. Field trips with my students and my mentor group. That's awesome. So the group, the Funeral Directing 101, just to touch on that a minute, it is a huge group of people who are beginning school, who are in school, who are doing apprenticeships, and there are licensees in the group as well that impart their wisdom on students. So the students can ask questions, and they can talk about school. They can try and sell books. They can talk about, all sorts of things, online programs and in-class programs, all different things that they want to know before they head off to school, making the right choice in going to a school. And then they can also just ask general questions about boards and things like that. The two best things I think about the group: one, I don't allow memes and crap like that. It just junks up the feed. I want only content that is helpful for students. Students also, you get a lot of feedback in your life from people that you don't need. If you're excited you get into mortuary school and you post it on your Facebook, you sometimes are going to get that. Well, why do you want to do that? Why do you want to touch the dead? And you get all these stupid jokes from people. And it's not helpful. If somebody gets into University of Michigan to study law, you're not going to get as many lawyer jokes and, oh, why would you want to do that? But when you go to mortuary school, you get those jokes. So it is a safe place that people also post, hey, I passed my board, or hey, I graduated, and everybody is encouraging and supporting and doesn't give you crap like you get from your general friends and your general family. So it's just a good, safe place where kind of cuts out the crap, I guess you could say, of the jokes and the things that we hear from everybody throughout our whole profession, throughout our whole lives. And yeah, it's great, but it's nice to just focus and have full, concentrated, 100% support when you want that support and when you're excited about something, and not have to defend what you're excited about. Because we do that and we get that, and it's throughout our whole career because people don't quite understand. But when you're a student, and when you're an apprentice, and when you're a funeral director, you get it. And you get the passion, and you get the drive, and you get why we do this job. I don't understand why a plumber does their job. because I hate drains. Good for them. That's awesome that there's plumbers. I do what I do and people don't understand it, and I don't expect everybody to understand it. But if I want full support on something, I go to a group like my mortuary friends and my colleagues and things that understand and get why I do what I do. Do one or two last quick questions. Yeah, is it bad to see a dead body? Why do all people in America think it's a bad thing? It's how we're taught. Unfortunately, we believe what we're taught when we're young. And when we're told, hey, this is scary, you're going to believe it's scary growing up. And so it's generational. So unfortunately, like in the 70s and 80s, it became a thing to tell family or to tell kids it's scary and we don't want you going to the funeral home and we don't want you to do this and we don't. So now that generation is now grown up and are believing that it's not good to go to funerals because, oh, we can't handle it or it's scary or it's whatever. And so it's just getting passed down. It's going to cycle back around though, because I think people are realizing that when we skip the funeral home and we skip funerals and we skip everything and we just have mom sitting on the shelf and we haven't done anything, we feel lost and we feel like we've missed something. So then we cycle back to want to do something. So then we're going to cycle back to the funeral home. It's all cyclic, but it takes 15 to 20 years for these cycles to happen. So the reason we think it's bad is because we've been raised to think it's bad. We've been raised to think bodies are gross, that they're scary, that they're horrible. Well, nothing went from grandma taking a breath to grandma dead a minute later. Nothing made her gross. Nothing made her disgusting. Nothing made her scary. She just has no life in her anymore, but she's still grandma. It's still the woman who made us cookies when we were little. It's still the woman that cared for us and brushed our hair and, got us off the bus and snuggled us up on our lap and read books to us when we were little. It hasn't changed. That was the body that hugged you and kissed you and took care of you. Nothing changed her. So it's getting back to that mentality that the body and the vessel and that is still sacred to us. Like many cultures still believe, many cultures care for the dead and they keep them at home, but we also don't take care of our elderly at home. We send them off to nursing homes always. We don't bring them in and take care of the older generation. So a lot of bad stuff happening in our society that's going to cycle back around. And hopefully we catch on to the fact that we need to take care of and do all those things. I know that's a bigger answer than you wanted, but yeah, that's what it is. One more question. So Brian's asking if it's legal to spread somebody on the side of the highway. Technically, no. It is, it's public, but it's owned by somebody else. So if you're going to spread cremated remains anywhere, you have to have permission of the people that own that property. So if it's like public land, you need the state's permission because the state owns it. So you would need the state's permission to spread somebody's cremated remains there. But yes, this happens all the time that people spread cremated remains in waterways and on, land and all sorts of things. It's not illegal to spread cremated remains, but you need the permission of the landowner. But yeah, most people don't get it. So which is why I say, as long as I'm not involved, that is what it is. Thank you guys. Let me show you a quick. So this is my prototype, I think, for the coffee with Kari mug that I'll be doing. The ideas are over at the engraver and they're sending me samples and stuff soon. So I went with yellow as one of them. I think there'll be 3 different styles. So watch for those hopefully coming soon for mugs. So thank you guys. Appreciate you. Catch you next week. I think next week is a Friday as well. Going to be a coffee for Kari. Coffee for Kari. Yeah, I do need coffee. Coffee with Kari next Friday morning. Next Wednesday, I'll be tied up, but I will catch you guys next week. If you want some specific questions, just send them over to Kari@KariNorthey.com. I have a big call happening later today, so send some positive mojo thoughts my way. And oh, Max headed off to Starbucks. And I will talk to you guys later. So go share one of my videos with somebody, share it with a friend. Help me get up those sub numbers. It's always good. Like, subscribe, share, all those things. I don't always ask for those things. I forget. But thanks for being a part of it, guys. I'll see you next week. Bye.